Folks, it is finally upon us. Diamond sports season. Sam Houston softball got things going last week in the Bearkat Classic, and up next, it's Bearkat baseball coming up this Friday. They start the season with a three-game series against the Missouri State Bears. And joining us to begin this pod is Austin Farmer from prospectsworldwide.com. Austin, it's so nice to see you. The only honestly, I love talking to you about baseball all the time. I get a lot of my insight from you, and you know, we bring you on because of that, and also you know a little bit more about this team than we do because coming into this year, 26 newcomers. There's just so much unknown about this team led by head coach Jay Sirianni.
Yeah, like you said, 26 newcomers, and I think there are only like 10 returning players. And a lot of those guys are sophomores now. So we got guys like Jace Martinez, Blake Brown, Brock Rod, elite name, by the way. Guys like that, Ryan Peterson. So it's going to be a really new team. So it's going to be interesting to see how the team develops as the season progresses.
Yeah, obviously Austin past few years has been really good to Sam Houston. I mean, a lot of seniors have come and gone through this year. Sam Houston's gonna have to rely on young guys, which we haven't had to do on quite some time. Talk about some of these new guys, either the transfers or freshmen that you expect to get major playing time, coming into this season.
Yeah, so the two guys I'm really looking forward to seeing this season are going to be Sam Lee, a freshman from Montgomery, and then Ty Johnny, a catcher from Temple College. You know, nobody can replace Walker Yannick after the 3 years that he put together. But I saw Johnny a couple of times at Temple last year, and then I saw him a couple of times during his scrimmages inter squad in the fall. And he's a guy who I don't know if he's really going to be an impact type player, but I like his approach at the plate. He's From what I've seen, he doesn't really chase out of the zone too much. I don't know how much he's going to impact the ball. I don't know how the power is going to develop, but I do like his approach. So I think he'll be a good on-base guy. His arm is pretty decent. His blocking skills are pretty decent. So I think that for 2025 and 2026, like he should be the guy behind the plate. That's who I would bet on. I know that there's Grant Nodelman who transferred from what junior college? Cisco Junior College, I think he transferred from.
Hmm.
Someone fact check me on that. Um, but yeah, I saw him hit a home run during inter squad. That was a month or so ago, and it was down the right field line, so there might be some power in his bat there. But Sam Lee is a guy that I'm really looking forward to seeing this year. He was originally committed to Arkansas, but he changed his commitment to Sam Houston. His mom owns a restaurant in Montgomery, I believe, and she even there was a fundraiser a month ago, and his mom was the host for the food and everything. So it's great to see someone like that change their commitment and stay local. He's a guy that I see having effortless power. He's not going to sell out, at least from what I've seen. So I think that 2025, I don't know how that's going to go for him, but I think a couple years down the line, he's going to be a legit draft pick, in my opinion.
Yeah, Grant Nodelman, Barton County Community
Wharton County.
College. So he's it's that catcher spot. That's was the is one of the biggest question going into this, and you seem to like Ty quite a bit. I mean, you've seen him play out there when he was at JUCO. He committed back in November of 2 years ago, 2023, before the season, because you know committing is very weird for is very different from any other sports when it comes to baseball. But so you kind of we all kind of knew at that point like Walker is going to leave. He's a first round pick, and well, lo and behold, first round pick goes to the Astros. So that leaves a big void in that catcher position. I know Luke and you also are not too happy you went to the Astros. So I saw that smirk over there, Luke.
Yeah.
I'm looking at you over there. But and it's the second first round pick from Sam Houston in the last 6 years. You saw Colton Cowser go in 2021. Just talk a little bit about Sam Houston as a program.
Yeah, they've come a long way. Like, I know a former Blue Jays scout who said that back when he was with the Jays, one of the challenges that he had to do was go to a school that really didn't have anybody and trying to find someone. And one of the schools that he went to was Sam Houston. So the program over the last couple of decades has really progressed and really making a name for themselves. And, Matt Deggs really helped with that. And then now Sirianni is looking pretty good overall. And I think that the program is in a really good direction. This year with all the newcomers, I'm not sure how the season is going to unfold. I think it could be either be a 30 win season or a 30 loss season. I think, like I said earlier, it depends, but I think it's set up really nicely for the future. And I do think that like guys like Addison Smith, who, he was at Oklahoma State last season, didn't get a lot of playing time, chose to go to Sam Houston. And I think Sam Houston could be that kind of program where it's like if you're a big recruit, but you're not getting a lot of playing time at the bigger D1 schools, a place like Sam Houston is going to be a great option.
Yeah, one of the best things I think Seamstress is taking advantage of is being able to play in some really cool tournaments and great venues. We saw a few years ago being at Minute Maid and they go up to Globe Life, and this year they're in Frisco and playing a top 25 team, in Arkansas and then also LSU, right? And I believe it's
Uh,
Kansas State, right?
Yeah, yeah,
it's Nebraska, LSU, and Kansas State.
Kansas State. Yep. Um, what do you know kind of what these other programs think about Sam Houston, some of the bigger programs and kind of what their opinion is of Sam Houston baseball?
Honestly, I don't have insight on that. I wish I did, but I will say I think that look at a program like DBU. They're competitors in the playoffs year after year. I think Sam Houston could be in that direction where even if they're not like a College World Series contender, I think they're going to get a lot of respect from bigger programs like that, where Conference USA is a pretty good spot for Sam Houston right now. But I think that eventually, if recruiting gets better and if athletics will spend another subject, that will really help the reputation of Sam Houston for baseball.
Looking at on the mound, there's been a lot of consistency there. Colton Atkinson's no longer there. So and some other guys, Chandler David as well. So they're gonna have to rely on some younger arms. And one arm I'm especially excited about is Ryan Peterson. I think he's gonna be your Friday night guy uh, for this year. He's only a sophomore, but we saw shades of it last year whenever he started on a Tuesday or Wednesday or even occasionally on a weekend. Uh, Austin, I really like this guy. Am I right to be high on this kid from Shiner?
I think you are. I saw him in the inner squad when, like I said, a month ago or so. Time flies. I lost track of time. But yeah, I saw him go 3 or 4 innings, I think, and he was consistently 89, 92, which the stadium gun is off 1 or 2 miles per hour. So he might realistically be 92, 94, top out 95. And he does have two different shapes on his slider. One is a really nice sweeper, and then another is a tighter slider. At first, I thought it was a cutter. But then I was corrected by one of the coaches that it is a tighter slider. I think his changeup will need a bit of work moving forward. But if you have three legit pitches like that, Friday night guy easy.
Yeah, and when we think about Sam Houston, batting never seems to be the issue. It always seems to come down to pitching, and especially in the bullpen.
Yeah.
Sam Houston's lost a lot over last year. Kind of talk about the bullpen and see kind of the quality arms that we have in there. Maybe a guy that uh, maybe that we don't know of that you could expect to make some big innings and play in some big time games.
Yeah, so one guy who I remember from Temple was Garrett Bauman, and he's a bigger, larger frame. He throws hard, and I didn't think the command was that bad. Like you said, the bullpen is a big issue. So I think if it's used right, even with the lack of command, a guy like Bauman or the other arms, I think if they can just throw strikes and fill the zone, I think that it will be less of an issue. But right now, I would say Bauman is the guy that really sticks out in my mind. Currently, I did see Felix Sheetal, I think is how his name is pronounced. I don't know if he's going to be used as a starter, but he's a transfer, I believe, from Seattle University, and he's 6'6", 230. So whether he goes rotation or bullpen, I think that he should be efficient. He was like 87, 88. So, probably low 90s realistically. And slider looked not great, but if he's out of the pen, I think he could be serviceable.
Is there any other pitchers that you like that are in that pitching staff right now that you know as a I mean for those that don't know it is Sirianni that oversees the pitching staff. He's the head coach and he does pitching. So
I am really interested to see how Brock Rod develops. You know, he was like 90, 92 last year. I think the off-speed stuff looked okay. And he is on the smaller side, so I don't know how that's going to play at the next level. But I think for his time at Sam Houston, he should be a good Saturday guy, potential maybe Sunday. So I think that him behind Peterson should be a decent rotation.
he almost seems like kind of like a Michael Watson type pitcher, someone that we can have start on Sundays, a lefty that Sam can have at their disposal.
Yeah, I can agree with that. You know, Watson ended up signing as a non-drafted free agent with the Cardinals too.
Yeah.
So there was something there, and Rod is only a sophomore, so this year he might play that role, but I think by the time that he's a junior, I would imagine he's either a Saturday or Sunday guy full time.
Yeah, with all these new faces, how do you think the Bearcats are going to line up defensively in the field? Because I mean, there's just so much turnover from last year to this year. There's you don't really know who's going to play third base, who's going to play first base, who's going to be in the outfield. I mean, do you have any predictions on that of what you've kind of seen so far?
I think anything is really up in the air right now. Like, you know, Jace Martinez was a shortstop last year in an inter squad in scrimmage. He played at second. And Colin, I think you said that you saw him at left in the scrimmage this week.
I saw him in the outfield. Yeah, he threw a heck of a cut, like a tracked down the ball in the left center field gap and just threw a nice ball to the cutoff man.
Yeah, so I mean, if he shows defensive versatility, like he could play all three of those spots. Like if Addison Smith doesn't work out at short, from what I saw, I know it was just one scrimmage, but his glove work needs to be steadier. I think that his reaction times could improve. Obviously, he could do that as the season progresses, but if that doesn't work out, I do think there's enough versatility on the field there where it's like, you know, he and Martinez could flip around. Blake Brown could split between third and second, and then Sam Lee in the outfield, and then maybe Chris Benavidez, the new guy from remind me what junior
Am
college he transferred.
Amarillo, way up
Amarillo.
there.
Way up there.
Yeah. So many of these new guys, you know, it's hard to keep track of where they came from. But yeah, he looks promising. And then, you know, Hunter Autry could be a guy that, you know, first base DH. He does look like he leaned down a little bit, so he might be more athletic at first, and hopefully the power is more consistent there. But I think that Marthaljani definitely behind the plate at least to start the season. Maybe Nodelman comes in, but I really like Marthaljani, but it just depends on his bat. So I do think that there are plenty of options and a lot of versatility that nothing is like set in stone right now. I think there might be a lot of workshopping in the non-conference, and then as conference goes on, that's when the positions are more set.
So I kind of want to take a wider perspective a little bit, Austin. You know, obviously Sam Houston was in the Southland Conference for a long time. They were in the WAC for 2 years now, and they're in Conference USA. Conference USA baseball as a whole, it just seems like is a really good baseball conference. I was wondering what your thoughts are on Conference USA.
Yeah, it's definitely a good spot. I think that the top schools for Conference USA will perennially be like Louisiana Tech, Dallas Baptist, Sam Houston. You know, Western Kentucky might be in the mix. I think it's overall the top schools are really good, and then it kind of not like drops off, but it's not as deep. But I do think that it's a really good place for Sam Houston to compete right now, especially if they add more schools. Like if some schools leave and then they add more. I do see them staying in the conference for the foreseeable future, but I've always had it in the back of my mind that if things go in the right direction, they could end up being like a Big 12 school. Like, you know, like you said, they've had two first round picks in the last 6 years. I think it's just going to be a matter of can they bring in more revenue? Can they get more fans to show up across all their sports? And I think a number of factors could prevent that for the short term future, but I think maybe like down the road, I think that the Big 12 is a big possibility for Sam Houston.
Wow.
That's a big prediction right there, man.
Yeah, you know, the recruiting is really good. Like there are so many open doors for Sam Houston baseball. Like I said earlier, it could be a great landing spot where if they're not playing at Oklahoma State, then they come to Sam Houston and develop better. Like even Colton Cowser said, if you really want to develop your skills and get more playing time, Sam Houston's a great landing spot. So I think that if things are in the right direction, and again, this is not in the short-term future at all. I think that this is like down the road that if everything goes right, I think at some point in time, maybe in our lifetime down the road, that Sam Houston could end up there. I think that things are in a really good spot right now.
Well, everyone says location, 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 right? That's the biggest value you can have in being right in between Houston, Dallas, Louisiana, Austin. And you have huge bases right there, which are baseball, hot seats, right? I mean, there's huge programs, huge, great Texas high school baseball. I came from a high school that produces great baseball. It's everywhere, and people know Sam Houston. People understand of kind of what the program is. It is interesting to see or to kind of think about where could Sam Houston go from here? If obviously they would go wherever football goes, I would assume, but with all the renovations and all the money starting to pour in, maybe, you could see an opportunity there, at least to like the American pretty soon, maybe.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned University of Houston. Like, what, 10 years ago they were Conference USA, now they're Big 12.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
Austin, just kind of pivoting back to the team, just kind of, you kind of already touched on it a little bit, but where exactly can this team go this year? Do you think, I mean, I believe every team I think every team, well, this is going to probably be a prediction. I believe every team will be able to make the conference tournament unless they have it to where only one or two teams. So there's no official word on how the tournament qualification works. But but let's just say for the argument's sake that everyone makes it back, everyone makes it. Uh, can Sam Houston, you know, be a team kind of like where they can make a sneaky deep run and obviously before that, where do you see them in the regular season, especially since they face a lot of big time opponents?
I think it's definitely possible that they can make a sneaky run. I think realistically, maybe third place should be a good spot for Sam Houston this year. Like I said earlier, too, it could either be a 30-win season or a 30-loss season. I think it really depends on how all the newcomers mesh and how things come together. I'm not saying that 30 losses is going to happen, but I think that this is definitely a rebuilding year, is my point. And I think that if things develop faster than they should, which is definitely a possibility with guys like Martinez and Brown, and they could take the new guys under their wings and things will hopefully develop nicely. I think that they could make a push for a conference tournament, definitely.
Kind of one more thing real quick. Just kind of talk a little bit about the coaching staff that supports Sirianni because because you and I have talked to, obviously, you know, a little bit in the leading up to this season, like, and Sirianni really does have a really good support staff around him.
Yeah, their coaching staff is really impressive. Like Shane Webb, I know is a guy that's active on social media and he seems to really be a good face for the program. And from my understanding, he's really happy here and everything, and we're happy in Huntsville. And one guy who I've seen here and there, and I saw him at the fundraiser, I've seen him at scouting events, is Kyle Simons, and I think he's a really good person and a really good coach and recruiter. Like when I saw him at a 5 tool event, he said that they even signed a guy from there. So I think that Sirianni does have good support behind him. And I would say it's a solid coaching staff overall, and that's why I do think that it is also a possibility. From what I saw at the function or at the fundraiser, it really felt like a family. Like it really seemed like the cats have really like gotten to know each other, and everything is. It felt like they were really a family. So I think that there is a good foundation there that things could really blossom.
All right, well, that's honestly all from me. I think you said more than enough, honestly, Austin. And so, where can people find you? And how about you talk a little bit about prospectsworldwide.com real quick?
Yeah, you can find me on X at AustinF0421. I post random crap random baseball crap. I get bored and I'm just like, huh, what can I do that, will help kill time? I think I'll make some kind of snarky remark. So if you want some stuff like that, you can follow me on there, and you can follow my website, Prospects Worldwide, at Prospects World W on X. And this season, I definitely plan on getting out to a lot of games for Sam Houston, and I'm going to be more doing the video through my personal account. So that's where you'll see like a lot of the game video, but you can also see the reposts and everything on Prospects Worldwide's X through reposts and everything. And we are a smaller site, but we do have some fairly good connections. One of our guys is now with the Giants, was with the O's, and I've learned a lot through him. And we know other people in the industry. So while still are small, like I think we're a good tight knit group where we learn from each other. And you know, in a world where a lot of people care about fantasy baseball, we're more traditional scouting. So it's really fun to just go around and see all the talent around you. And I'm really looking forward to the season, man. This off season has been brutal.
All right, Austin, give me your postseason prediction. You're going to Omaha. Who's lifting the trophy at the end of the season?
Ooh.
Oh, man. I think
Colin, give me yours
LSU is
too.
definitely a contender. They've got a lot of good guys. I hate to say it. I really hate to say it, but A&M, man. A&M looks really, really strong this year. That they're number one by a lot of guys, and if people like Caden Kent can repeat in the World Series again, I think it's going to come down to those two teams for the final of the College World Series. And I know that's a super basic answer just because those are like the top guys, but the depth on those rosters, insane.
It's interesting. I've always been a big Arkansas guy. Like I like what they've done, what they do over there as a program. It's consistent. Even when times when they're not seemingly pretty good, they always find a way to win and make other teams' lives a living hell. But I mean, A&M's a honestly, yeah. I mean, I just hope at least Sam Houston beats them whenever they come to Huntsville in March. I believe it's in March. Um, so if we can win that, I'll call it a success. I might have to unfortunately say A&M, but I also wouldn't be surprised if LSU makes another miraculous run again like they did last year, because whatever Coach Johnson over there has got cooking over there, he just seems to always finds a way to get LSU back into that big stage of, not just the regionals, but also somehow getting past that into the supers and then getting to Omaha. I mean, if that team gets to Omaha, it's going to be pretty tough for whoever else wants to try to lift that trophy.
Yeah, and they got Chase Shores back from injury, so if he can stay healthy, like you saw him his freshman season, that dude's
Yeah.
insane. So
He's
I think that
six
could be
he's 6'7", 6'8", those 100 miles an hour, like bro. Like
yeah.
I'll bow out of that. But Austin,
Did
thank you.
Wake Forest lose their pitcher?
Chase Burns,
Yeah.
yeah, he was a first rounder by the Reds.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
yeah, but they
Yeah.
do have the pitching lab, so they could be another team that if not make the final, comes close.
Yeah, Wake Forest is always interesting. The Demon Deacons are every year. But Austin, thank you very much for joining us, and hopefully the next time we talk to you, it's either when Sam Houston you know has a really good regular season, prepares for the Conference USA tournament, or if it comes before that, Walker Yannick starts making the rounds around major in the minors and maybe has an early debut in Major League Baseball because we never know. So.
You got to give your prediction though. We can't skip you.
I did. I said A&M
Oh,
or
no, I was talking
LSU.
about Luke.
Oh, Luke, I forgot about you,
Look,
man.
look, I'm not going to pretend like I know that much about college
Yes,
baseball because
see, see, that's exactly why I didn't.
I'm not a huge baseball guy, but Colin is. I'm gonna roll
Hey,
Florida. I'm just gonna
you,
roll Florida and I'm gonna go with them.
That's
all
not
right,
bad. That's
dark
not
horse.
bad. That's not a bad one. Well, once again, Austin, we'll see you
Wyatt
when we see
Langford.
you.
Wyatt Langford. That's all I got from
He's
this.
not there anymore, so it doesn't matter.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
Thank you, Austin. Appreciate you stopping by, man.
Appreciate y'all.
All right, joining us to give us a wider perspective a little bit on college baseball. It's going to be Jake McKeever. He's the SEC lead on College Baseball Central, but he also does a lot of other things. Jake, I'm really happy for you to join me. Because Sam Houston is really a small part to it seems like a growing sport. The trend kind of the last few years is that college baseball has been growing. I see it's becoming a bit more popular, especially with like the TV deals that it's becoming, and also just the coverage as a whole.
Yeah, the coverage has been awesome. I always say college baseball is the people's sport. So as we get more and more people into it, it's always people centric. Yeah, Sam Houston, they were a mainstay in the tournament there for a little bit. They kind of punched above their weight class a little bit the past few years. So I'm excited to kind of talk about Sam Houston and college baseball as a whole because I know they're a team that I get to see a lot just because they're about 45 minutes away from me. So it seems like I'm always up at Sam Houston. This season should be definitely interesting, though, as I'm sure you can attest to.
Yeah, well, 26 newcomers. It's you lose Walker Yonick to the draft. That's you lose one of the best players in Sam Houston history, probably the best catcher in Bearkat history. Just Jake, I don't know if you've ever covered such a roster overhaul like this, but if you have, I'm kind of curious what does the trend usually lie with? Does the team, is it basically a rebuilding year where they're not going to win, like, let's say they're going to win less than 25 games? Is it a year where they're not even going to reach the 21 mark, or is it going to be or could it be a year where they can win at least 30 games and make a run in the conference tournament and maybe make a regional? Just kind of the trends of roster overhauls in college baseball, especially one this big. Have you seen anything like this before?
Yeah, Kentucky, I was actually just doing their projected lineup. They're projected to start, I believe, 7 transfers. Georgia's another one that's really transfer heavy. Lamar, there's a few other schools like Southeast Louisiana, too, that when I talk to some of their coaches in the Southland, where they're almost not recruiting high school kids. They're exclusively recruiting JUCO guys and transfers that are coming up. And it's going to be a new kind of territory for Jay Serrani just because I feel like he's so good at finding kind of these diamond in the roughs, like Colton Cowser, who's on a major league team. You mentioned Walker Yannick, who just got drafted, but I mean Nick Mikolajczyk, if you remember him from a few years ago, he's another guy that's been in the big leagues a little bit. So I mean, Jay Serrani is really great at developing talent. He's really great at finding talent early, and I can be honest, this is probably going to have to be one of his better coaching jobs, just because there really isn't a ton of talent on paper. But again, it's Sam Houston. Like they never have a ton of talent on paper.
It's crazy because I didn't know much about Sam Houston baseball until I started going there and learning a bit more. They're really they're consistent in a way. They're a mid-major that's always finding their name in, like, the national conversation a little bit. And the location plays a big part of it because you're not far away from CSTAT with Texas A&M. You're not far away from Austin, with Texas, and then they play Houston 3 times a year, and they sometimes play Baylor, Rice, and like all these other schools that have really, not just a rich history in college baseball, but also their power schools and all that. Like, just, but from your perspective, why does it feel like Sam Houston always finds itself to be that team that everyone seems to not really bat an eye until they really start going?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, there's a ton of really, really great baseball programs around here. Sam really isn't getting the blue chip guys, but I think Serrani kind of plays into that a little bit. I mean, if you remember too correctly, Sam Houston really hasn't been D1 that long in the grand scheme of things. Like they were a D2 power forever, and then David Pierce really elevated the program kind of to where it is now. And they absolutely hit a home run hire in Jay Serrani. But I mean, they recruit the Cypress area really, really well in Northwest Houston. They always seem to have Woodlands kids, and then the small town kids. It seems like that's another place that they really thrive. Is Walker Yannick was a small town kid, so I think that they're kind of an interesting crossroads as they get these small town kids that maybe Houston isn't the best fit for them, maybe Baylor isn't the best fit for them, but they also get a ton of talent from Houston that's just like 45 minutes away. I think that they kind of fly a little bit under the radar in a good way. But again, there's a ton of programs that flew under the radar for years and years and years, like Dallas Baptist, that are finally starting to get the recognition that they deserve. It's just really tough because Sam's moving up the ladder. I mean, the CUSA is almost a completely different beast than it was in the WAC for a few years.
You talk a little bit about Conference USA. I mean, obviously they have Dallas Baptist, just the Patriots up there seemingly always finding themselves in the top 25. There's MLB talent almost every year that they play. I mean, there's a I forgot that pitcher's name that he was really good last year, the number one
Ryan
guy.
Johnston.
Ryan
Yeah,
He I don't know if you were at that game, but him
yeah,
and Colton
I was there. Yeah, I was there.
yeah,
Yeah, it
yeah.
was a good game.
Him and Colton Atkinson were just going at it, but that Johnson guy, man, he just threw from a he throws from a weird slot, but he
Yeah, I
throws
remember
so hard.
he'd always come off with the money sign.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
exactly. It
then
is so
he
weird.
went what 8 2/3, and then Walker chased him on that double.
Yeah,
So yeah, he's really good. Grant Jay's coming back again.
yeah,
And they're one of those teams too where they kind of bounce around conferences as well. But they were in the Missouri Valley for a little bit. I believe they were in the Summit for a little bit as well. But again, they're just a team. They're almost like a machine. Like they get guys in, immediately buy into the program. It's kind of a weirder, smaller, really Christian based program. It's actually a really, really cool program. I got to talk to their coach a little bit. And they just have guys that immediately buy in. So you mentioned them. They're a national power at this point. I think they
yeah.
currently have the longest mid-major streak for tournaments. And then there's other mainstays in the program like Louisiana Tech. And then there's schools with, for mid-major standards, huge, huge budgets like Liberty University is. So I mean, it's a really, really underrated conference for baseball. There's a ton of teams. New Mexico State, they always hit the ball, and they're kind of I mean, you were probably there last year when they played at New Mexico State. How
No,
big and weird that ballpark is, and they just tear the cover off the ball. So even like their quote unquote bad teams like that are still really, really good teams and do things really, really well. And the travel's another thing too. A lot of these are actual real road trips. As the closest one as I'm looking at over Dallas Baptist and Sam Houston. But if you don't get that one, you're going halfway across the country. So it's a really, really interesting baseball conference.
yeah, and they have the addition of Kennesaw State. I think Kennesaw State's a little bit of an underrated one right there.
Yeah, they were really competitive in the ASUN, and if you thought it was hard to track whack stuff a few years ago, the ASUN is an absolutely ridiculous tournament to go
Yes, it
ahead and
is.
track. For reference, what they do is the 8 teams make it, but it's pods of 4, and 3 teams from pod 1 make it out into the semifinals, and then 1 team from pod 4. So it's the top 4 teams in pod 1 and then 5 through 8 in pod 2. And 1 team from 5 through 8 goes on into the semifinals. So it's just a ridiculous conference tournament. And Kennesaw State never really pushed through. But again, there's a ton of really, really talented teams like Stetson knocked off Alabama in that regional last year. So, and they had a winning record in the ASUN too as well. So I know that they graduated a ton of talent, but I think Kennesaw as a program is really one of those ones that's on the rise.
Yeah, and they're familiar with Liberty as well. Liberty was pretty dominant in the ASUN, it seemed like, and then they of course went to Conference USA. Where do you think it stands though when it comes to college baseball as a whole, or at least come in comparison to the other mid-major conferences? Because this was a conference last year that got 2 teams in the regionals in Louisiana Tech and Dallas Baptist. I think because they were both really good teams. Louisiana Tech was underrated last year, I thought.
They were the conference winner, though.
Yeah, they were.
DBU, yeah. So it was kind of like if you remember a few years ago with ECU in the American, where they had Tulane go. That is kind of what it was. It's a really, really competitive conference, but DBU just does a tremendous job scheduling from an RPI standpoint. And if they win the conference outright in the regular season, it's really hard to kind of not include them.
Yeah.
But again, the Love Shack's not an easy place to go in and win with Louisiana Tech, and I think that is where the conference tournament's going to be this year too, as well. So
No,
that's going to be
it's up in Lynchburg actually.
Oh yeah, yeah, that was last year. I
Yeah.
forget that they always move it around because it was at Rice a few years ago.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
was a really cool because they had Nolan Chanel who played for Florida
Yeah.
Atlantic, so I get to see him in person. But from a mid-major standpoint, it's kind of in this weird middle ground where I don't think it's anywhere near the Big 12, who's kind of the worst of the power conferences, but it's a lot closer to the Big 12 than it is, the SWAC or the NEC. So it's kind of in that upper echelon of mid-majors where, I mean, I wouldn't want to see DBU in a regional. at all. They have a lot of depth and a lot of pitching. Louisiana Tech, I know that they gave Texas some fits a few years ago in a regional two as well. And, Sam Houston, I mean, they played Oregon State and the LSU defending national champions. It was a really, really competitive weekend when they were playing it down at LSU. So there are a lot of teams that never really break through and get to Omaha, but it's one of those things where it's really not that surprising when they play into weekend two.
We got Jake McKeever joining us here on Sam Houston Sports Talk from College Baseball Central. Kind of just expanding a bit more beyond Sam Houston, just to kind of give people a wider perspective on college baseball. How are things looking this year? Do you think there a surefire national champion this year, or is it still wide open? Every time I ask someone, it seems like it's always A&M that everyone is saying that's gonna win it all this year. I mean, obviously they're. I mean, we have Jace and they have these other guys, Kent and this in some
Sorrell, so I think
pitcher.
Sorrell is a really, really underrated aspect of the team. He's put on some really, really great muscle. I mean, yeah, you could talk ad nauseum about what A&M has from a pitching staff standpoint, but I mean, I'd still take the field. LSU absolutely reloaded. Kate Anderson and Chase Shores are going to be there Friday and Saturday guys. With Anthony Ianson, I think he's going to be in that Sunday role. They're really, really legit. Georgia, I think, with Colton Smith and Leighton Finley are really, really good. You can never count out Kevin O'Sullivan at Florida. There's like 10 or 15 programs. And then that's just in the SEC. That's not even talking about Virginia, who has arguably as good of a lineup as Texas A&M does with the stuff that they bring back with Henry Ford and Henry Godbout. They bring back their ace, Jay Wolfick. So, I mean, you could really, really talk about, 5 or 6 teams. But I think if you were to make me a gambling favorite right now, I think it definitely is Texas A&M. They're the only team that when I did all these SEC deep dives where you knew exactly who was going to play for them and what positions, everybody else had battles. A&M, it's like, okay, like Gavin Grahovic, who's going to go 1-1 in 2026, is going to play third. Jay Slavalette, who's probably going to go behind the Holiday Kid this year, but in the top 5, he's going to play right field. It's crazy because they have a kid like Sawyer Farr who turns down millions of dollars and is drafted in the top 100, and he's probably not going to play this year. I think that kind of speaks to how deep this A&M team is. They are absolutely loaded at multiple positions. I mean, for reference, for all your listeners that are old school A&M fans, their 8 or 9 hitter would probably be a 3-hole hitter in the Childress era, and he's going to be batting near the bottom of the lineup for him.
Do you think circling back on Sam Houston, is there a way for Sam Houston to be able to make it back to the regionals? Because from an at-large perspective, scheduling wise, if they win the right games, they give themselves a chance. But do you think the overhaul is just in the supposed rebuild is too bit is too would be too much for them to compete with these kind of teams? Because they're scheduled against some of these powerhouses. You said like LSU, Nebraska. I mean, I don't know if you consider K-State a powerhouse, but they're still a Big 12 team
They were a
anyway.
tournament team last year.
They were a
Yeah,
tournament team last year, and then you have Texas A&M coming to town. They're going to Baylor. They faced Houston 3 times. I mean, Houston, still has a lot of work to do, but they're still a Big 12 school. But do you think Sam Houston, for as much as you know at this time, I mean, considering the fact that there's still a lot of unknown about this team, do you think they have a shot to make some noise, especially in the regular season before the conference tournament?
yeah. I will say this, and that seems like it's every mid-major coach's pipe dream is to get an at-large bid. As we saw with Lamar last year,
Yeah.
you have to be like, I mean, for reference, Oklahoma ran away with the Big 12, and Lamar swept them at Oklahoma, and Lamar got left out of the tournament. So I think you really have to take a lot of that unknown and go ahead and handle your business. I think it's going to start with the pitching staff. It really is kind of a mixed bag of guys because Ryan Peterson only threw 30 innings for him last year. Cole, I know I'm going to butcher his name. Martha Johnny, he's another one. He had a really,
Yeah,
really great fall when
I
you and I
believe
got to see him.
I believe you
Did I
got
get it
that
right?
down actually. Yeah.
And if they pitch as good as they did in the fall against a UL team, I think that there's a lot to really like about them. The hitting, they get a few guys like Addison Smith coming down from Oklahoma State, that if he has a really great year, there's a lot of unknowns with Sam Houston, but I think Jay Serrani's earned the right to kind of have. I know fans always say trust Jay, as in trust Jay Johnson. Like trust Jay Serrani. Like is really a truly underrated coach. And I know that when I was talking to him, like I think back last year, I was like, I don't think he's going to stay at Sam Houston very long. He's a really, really great coach. Again, there's a ton of unknown, but everybody in college baseball right now has a ton of unknown. Like I mentioned, Kentucky starting a bunch of transfers.
Yeah, it's definitely gonna be the weirdest season of baseball I'm gonna be a part of as a Sam. Not just since I've gone to Sam Houston, because my first season was Walker Yawnick's first season in 2022. I was there when I saw his first home run, but you knew deep down, like when you saw the team in 2022, I should rather say, that there's something cooking. And well and behold, they went to a regional in 2023 after winning the Western Athletic Conference. But it just seems like the move to Conference USA is kind of stalling that upward trend, because we kind of just already covered
Mm-hmm.
it. Conference USA is just so competitive. But I think personally, with Jay Sirianni, what he's done with hitting coach Shane Wedd, and you got Jake Carlson, the recruiting coordinator, and you got a bunch of other support staff like Kyle Simons and Hayden Evans, it should, and the location of Huntsville. I feel like Sam Houston can propel itself back up to being a. I mean, they are. You could argue that they're a good mid-major, but there's still like a lot of potential where they can get
Mm-hmm.
up to be a top mid-major, especially when they're in such a tough conference.
Yeah, and you don't want what's happening with that school that's down on 45. You don't want what's happened to their athletic program where you put in so much time, effort, resources, and then when you get into the conference that you feel you deserve, you kind of stop with the NIL funding. So I mean, it's one of those things too where you really do have to invest in the team. You have to invest in the guys that Jay Serrani wants to have. And I'm not saying it's got to be a $5 million roster like A&M has, but every little bit helps. And especially it can be as simple as funding the 34 scholarship limit. I know that there's a few schools that kind of have differing opinions on that. I think if you want to be successful, you have to fund all of those scholarships. Give Jay Serrani the tools to succeed, because he's shown in the past, like they've had guys like Clayton Chadwick who went on to Georgia. He started in Georgia. So he has a track record of finding guys with a chip on their shoulder that can come in. And if Sam Houston wants to remain competitive in Conference USA, they're going to have to spend like the Liberties, the Dallas Baptists, and stuff like that to get the amount of talent that they want.
Kind of an underrated topic into this college baseball season. It's been the scholarship and roster size changes. Can you off? And I think I'm still very ignorant to it. Like I don't know how it exactly is going to work now. And I think a lot of people that are getting into college baseball don't really know much about it, because there was a whole lot of because the college
It's
sports as a whole,
confusing.
the college
Yeah.
sports as a whole is just changing. It seems like by the hour. But from your perspective, and from what, I don't know if you've ever talked to other coaches, players, or people affiliated with programs, just kind of how this roster changes work and how they can affect college baseball in the future.
Yeah. So for reference, right this second, shout out 11.7 podcast. But there is 11.7 scholarships right now for them to use across all of their entire roster. When I was getting recruited back in 2015, 2016, if you had 70% scholarship, like you were a dude. So that for reference, I really didn't do full rides or anything like that. No seniors got scholarships. They were technically walk-ons just because they were kind of playing with those stuff. But recently, they announced that. Well, the flip side of that was you could have basically unlimited rosters. So the flip side of that now is they've really got it down to where they want 37 guys there in the fall. You cut 3 to get down to a 34 limit, so the roster sizes are going to be smaller, but you can fully fund up to 34 scholarships. So we've seen schools like Arizona State and A&M come out and say that they are going to fund it. And you can enter the portal at any time, and you just like football, you can move up and move down. You can move conferences, as we've seen with a few stuff with like Cade Copeland coming over from Louisiana Tech. There's interconference. So like 10 years ago, that wasn't a thing where you could transfer in conference. I had a buddy that played baseball at Baylor who tried to transfer to Texas, and Baylor blocked it. So they really have kind of become lenient on that. We're still waiting on the Diego Pavia situation. It's a really, 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 really big deal in baseball, just because JUCO baseball is such a thing. Jose Batista, Albert Pujols, like legitimate major league guys have played junior college baseball, whereas for football, it seems like it's always kind of more troublemakers. Like good baseball players play junior college. So they're waiting on a decision about a kid, Alberto Ozuna at Tennessee, if he can get that extra year of eligibility just because he played at JUCO. and it looks like he's going to absolutely get it. So it's a really, really weird scenario right now where we're in college baseball because there's all these drastic roster changes where they're like, okay, we're cutting roster limits to make it to where you can only have 34, but you can fully fund from 11 to 34. But not every school is going to be able to fund it. And you can transfer in and out. And junior college doesn't really count towards your NCAA eligibility. So, I mean, I talk to coaches pretty regularly about stuff like that. And I'm actually sometimes breaking news to coaches for reference. That's how quickly sometimes it kind of changes.
Do you think this kind of change is going to negatively or positively affect programs like Sam Houston or even smaller programs?
Um, I won't say which coach it was, but there was a coach at a school that was on the East Coast that is 100% considered a mid-major who said that if they fully fund 35 scholarship limits, the entire conference will not exist. So right now there's about 320 college baseball programs. He said if this gets funded, it's probably going to go down to 200. But I mean, college baseball also has never been better. So the schools like Florida, A&M, LSU are going to get more and more talent, and that is going to come at the expense of maybe some of these mid majors falling by the wayside. So it's really an interesting dynamic because the best are getting better, but the worst are also kind of pulling out in a way, as we've kind of seen like Furman a few years ago cut their baseball program. So it really is kind of a double-edged sword with it, and it really is a balancing act where they're trying to keep everybody happy.
I heard something about how Iowa State was going to try to potentially get baseball back.
Uh, I would be really, really shocked by that just because of the whole Title IX stuff.
Yeah.
Um, that's where a lot of the hangups with baseball programs is. That's where SMU's is, for reference. If you've ever wondered why SMU, it's a Title IX thing. So, dude, I don't even want to get into the political aspects of Title IX, but
Yeah, it's
if
a very shaky ground.
yeah, and I am not well versed in Title IX methodology. That was just what somebody around SMU told me is yeah, it's a Title IX thing. But it's one of those things where you're going to see programs shrinking, not programs growing.
Uh-huh. Well, hopefully it doesn't go to a point where Sam Houston ever gets rid of its program. But I honestly don't see that happening because of how historically good and like,
Yeah,
if you look at the future of athletics as a whole, it seems like baseball has been that one consistently good program, even back when it was not a D1 school.
yeah, you'd be surprised though how many programs like when you talk to people like Cal a few years ago thought about defunding the baseball team.
Yeah.
Rice always kind of murmurs with it. So it really is like a weird dynamic where you're like, yeah, like they'll always have a baseball team. But I mean, there is like a point where it would get too expensive. I don't think Sam Houston's ever going to get near that point. It would honestly break my heart if a school like Sam Houston wasn't able to compete. But there's always these like hush hush murmur conversations that go
Yeah,
on.
yeah, for sure. Well, to kind of end things off, real quick, just kind of, what are you looking forward to this college baseball season? Do you think it's gonna be in a much bigger, spotlight than the last few years? Last year was a really good year, and it feels like though it's there's still a lot of room for it to grow.
Yeah, I will say this is going to be my fourth year covering it really, really in depth. Um, I feel like this was the first year where regionals got to take center stage. So I'm really excited and hoping in that May window that things really, really kick up just because the regionals were so incredible. I would say the thing that I'm looking forward to the most is there's a few just incredible, incredible student athletes that I haven't had a chance to see in person that I'll get to see really, really early. Cam Canarella from Clemson, I'm super excited to see him. A few of these young guys that Texas has and Adrian Rodriguez, um, and then Evan Mendoza. I'm really excited to see. So I'm just excited to see kind of that next crop of players come in because it feels weird. Like there's a few guys like I remember Braden Montgomery talking about him as like a freshman up and coming, and now he got drafted and moved on with everything. So it's just incredible to kind of learn the cycles and stuff like that. That you always kind of have to take a step back and be like, okay, now this guy's like Hunter Autry. If you remember, he's a guy that's going to be one of the leaders for the Sam Houston team. Like I remember when he came in as a freshman and he was playing in midweeks. So it's going to be interesting to kind of see that dynamic.
Oh, well, Jake, I appreciate you hopping on. Where can people find you and talk a little bit about College Baseball Central while you're at it?
Yeah, of course. Like I said, I'm in College Baseball Central. The best way to find us is College Baseball Central on Twitter. That's College Base CNT. Or follow myself. I retweet a ton of their stuff. CBC Jake MCK. Be sure to follow me there. I probably will annoy you a little bit with my baseball stuff, but I tend to talk about everybody in the SEC. If there's anybody who you think I'm not giving enough love to, or I would all the time I have A&M people call me a Texas homer, and then Texas people call me an A&M homer. So my goal is to be called like an Arkansas homer. That's kind of my crowning achievement for this year. But yeah, CBC Jake EMCK is probably the best way to follow me.
All right. Well, that was Jake McKeever. Well, to end off this preview pod, Sam Houston baseball is back. They start the season Friday, 6:30 p.m. Central Time against Missouri State, 3-game series there. So be sure you're out there, Bearcats. And if you have, hey, baseball's back, baby. We're all pretty excited about it.
Can't wait.